Good morning, members. It's a great day to be in Georgia. Great day to be in the People's House. How you doing, Gabe? Good to see you, my friend. The hour for convening having arrived. All members will please take their seats. Mr. Clerk, will you ring the bell? Well, good morning again. If all members will please come to the floor, start looking for your seats. We're going to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber. And Mr. Clerk, will you unlock the machines? Have all members voted? All members voted? If so, Mr. Clerk, will you lock the machines? Doorkeepers, will you please close the doors and keep them closed? As is our custom, we will begin our day with scripture reading and prayer by our chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 172nd House District, Representative Chaz Cannon. Representative Chaz Cannon from down in Moultrie, Georgia. I think I knew that. You told me enough. Representative Cannon.
Morning, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning it's my honor to share with you Reverend Freddie Castle from Mother Easter Baptist Church in Moultrie, Georgia. Both Reverend Castle and Mother Easter Baptist Church have distinguished backgrounds and histories. Mother Easter Baptist Church was founded in 1894 in Moultrie and will celebrate its 130th anniversary this summer. The church is named in honor of the woman, Mother Easter, who gave the founders of the church permission before the original site was built to hold worship services in her home. It's one of the most recognized locations in Colquitt County. Reverend Castle was born and raised in Houma, Louisiana, I think I said that right, and received his Bachelor of Science degree from Grambling State University in Grambling, Louisiana. He later received a Master of Divinity degree from Morehouse School of Religion at ITC in Atlanta, Georgia. Before being named pastor at Mother Easter in 2009, Reverend Castle served as a youth pastor in Houston, Texas. He also led the congregation of Shiloh Baptist Church in Tifton, Georgia, and served as a chaplain for the Georgia Department of Corrections until he retired from that position in 2022. Reverend Castle is joined by the First Lady of Mother Easter, Miss Margie H. Castle. There we go. And they have been married for 30 years and are the proud parents of 5 children, 2 sons, Lee and Ryan, 3 daughters, Erin, Caden, and Lydia. And although I'm not a member of Mother Easter, I take pride in the work both the church and Reverend Castle are doing in Southwest Georgia to spread the word of the Lord. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Reverend Freddie Castle.
Good to have you.
Praise God for all the things that he has done. Good morning to you, my brothers and sisters. It is good to be with you on this special occasion. This is a wonderful invitation. I want to thank Representative Cannon for allowing me this opportunity. I want to thank my lovely wife for being with me. She has been blessed to be my wife for over 30 years now. I hear her every night thanking God for me. Forgive me, Lord. I am a Baptist preacher, but I have been told that there is a time restraint, so I'm going to kind of shorten it a little bit. I'd like to call your attention to Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 7. The reading of the Lord's word said, "Now it came about after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' servant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, cross this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving them, to the sons of Israel, every place which the soles of your feet trod, I have given to you, just as I spoke to Moses from the wilderness and this Lebanon, even as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and all as far as the great sea toward the setting of the sun will your territory be. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you. I will not fail you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall give this people possession of the land which I swore to their fathers to give to them. Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go." If I was titling this message, I would say, "Blessed be the plodders," Plodders. 40 is a significant number in the Bible. It signals a state of waiting and preparation. In Genesis, we see Noah and his family shut up in the ark for 40 days. Exodus shows us Moses 40 days and night without eating or drinking on a mountain, standing in the presence of God. Numbers chapter 14 tells us that after God got tired of the Israelites grumbling, he commanded that they would spend 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Mark tells us that Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness being tempted by Satan. The Christian calendar marks the occasion of Jesus' death and resurrection by observing 40 days of fasting known as Lent. And the Georgia Constitution has deemed that this body shall meet 40 days to do the business of the people of this great state. 40 is an important number. It is a number that has been assigned this chamber are the Joshua's. The Bible says that Moses, my servant, is dead. Moses is dead, but Israel still needs a leader. Leadership is necessary, so God, who called Moses, now called Joshua to lead his people into the promised land. In this chamber are the Joshuas of this day, charged by God, just as Joshua of old, to lead the people unto new heights. You are elected by the people, but chosen by God. To look after the affairs of God's people is a high calling from an almighty God. It is a call to do justice. Justice is a major theme in the Bible. Micah 6:8 put it this way: He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly before your God. Justice is not a theoretical discourse to heat up philosophical or theological debates, but justice is a value to be expressed and practiced in the life of the believing community in order to be reflected in their conduct and their behavior, both of the leaders and those who are followers, corporations and citizens alike. Biblical justice is associated with truth-telling, fairness, equity, doing what is right, giving right judgment, being impartial and being straightforward. Upholding what is true and fair is the central theme of the idea of justice, for justice underlies everything. As leaders, you are called to execute right judgment, that is, justice. Leaders are made and given by God for the benefit of his people. Psalm 75:7 says, But God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. This chamber has been blessed with many great leaders in its history. You are all standing on the shoulders, reaping the fruit which you have not sown, of some of the finest men and women to ever accept the call to lead the people of this great state. The current speaker is now in the seat and holding the gavel of the great speaker, the late David Ralston, a giant in this chamber. It must be daunting to step into such shoes. From the highs of election night, where the talk is, we are going to do this and we are going to do that, to the moment of extreme anxiety when you realize there is no longer a we. It's just you. The good news is about it that you are never alone. The Bible teaches us that God gives us leaders, both prepared and in preparation according to his own heart. He gave the people Abraham, the friend of God. He gave him Moses, Israel's greatest liberator. He gave him Samuel, Israel's greatest judge. Gave him David, Israel's greatest king. And now God has given us you. What an awesome privilege to be included in such company, such high company, and to know for certain that God will not favor you any less than he favored those who have come before you, if you will trust in him. To whom much is given, much is required. With such high honors and privilege comes great sacrifice. Many who would envy you do not know the cost of leadership. If you think about it, long hours, stress, frayed and strained, and even lost relationships, because leaders sometimes have to make hard choices. Often those choices will cause people to ridicule, to judge you unfairly, to think that you're not what you ought to be. Leadership can be very lonely at times, but with God, God's call will come His presence. When you feel like you can't go any further, God has this superscription in many of the Psalms, Selah. Selah, which means lift up. It is a call to the musician to stop, to pause, to take a breath. We stop as we are doing the work that God has called us to do, because sometimes we get caught up in our own abilities and our own strength and believe that we can do it by ourselves. And every now and then you need to stop and recognize that this is not your plan, that this is God's plan. You are just a player in the plan. And every now and then you need to stop and ask God what it is you want me to do. At the end of the day, when you finish your work, ask the Lord, Lord, did I do my best? If I failed, did I at least try to do what you call me to do? God will lift you when you feel like you can't go any farther. When you feel that all of your strength is gone, when your strength is almost gone and your courage is waning, God will step in and revive you. When the stress and strain overwhelms you, when fear grips you, when frustration and confusion are your only companion, remember, God will never put more on you than you can bear. When you feel like you can't go anymore, God says, yes, you can. He knows you better than you know yourself. God allows problems to come to us because sometimes God just want to brag on you. Remember, God chose you because you are one of His best. And God wants everybody to see you in the difficulty and facing the problem that others cannot deal, because God has specially equipped you to deal with the problems of the people of the state of Georgia. And with every problem comes an opportunity for God to show Himself strong in you. Other folks will look at you and say, I know him. He ain't all of that. How can he be doing what he's doing? Just remind them that you're not by yourself. Remind them that there is a God who is standing in you and behind you and in front of you and around you, and He is guiding and leading and blessing you in order for you to bring glory to His name. The presence of God represents many things. One of the things it represents is strength and renewal. Isaiah 40:31 say that yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. We can never obey God's will in our own strength, but we can always trust God to provide the strength that we need. Philippians 4:13 say, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. If we trust ourselves, we will fail and fall. But if we wait on the Lord wait on the Lord by faith, we will receive the strength necessary to complete our journey. Now, when the Bible talks about wait, it doesn't mean that you sit around doing nothing. But wait means to hope, to look to God with expectation that God is going to provide the answer, that God will provide the resources, that God is the one who is going to make up the difference. Whatever you don't have, God is able to make up the difference. And so don't worry about what you don't have. Just remember who you really have. God said that He would supply all of your needs. To wait on God is to meditate on the character and promise of God, praying and seeking to glorify His name. It is asking God with the right attitude and with the right motive. If you do that, God will in fact come and give you the answer. It also says that it will renew you. Renew means to exchange. It's like taking old clothes off and putting new clothes on. When you wait on God, God will give you strength. You will trade your weakness for his power. When you wait on God, you can soar in a crisis. When you wait on God, you can run when the challenges are many, and you can walk faithfully day by day dealing with the issues of life. But you got to learn how to wait. William Carey, the modern father of missions, is quoted as saying this: "It is much harder to walk in the ordinary pressures of life than to fly like an eagle in a time of crisis." He says, "I can plod. That's my only genius. I can persevere in my definite pursuit. To this I owe everything." End of quote. Here it is. He's simply saying that the most effective leaders are not always the one who seem to be soaring. Often it is those who are just patiently plodding along. Blessed are the plodders, for they eventually will reach their destination. With God's presence come God's guidance. Psalm 23:3 say, "He guides me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake." General Assembly, God has a stake in your success because he chose you. He called you. He has assigned you. And God doesn't sponsor any flops. If you are flopping, it is not God. If you are flopping, it's something God doesn't want you to do. But God has promised that he would be with you. Joshua 1:5 says, "I will be with you. I will not fail you nor forsake you." Hope also comes with the presence of God. For hope make it not ashamed. Oftentimes we can feel that things have gone too far, that there is no way back, that there is no hope. But with God, all things are possible. Oh, our God is so much God that one time he had time to go backwards. Another time he had time to stand still and give his soldiers a chance to fight. He called Lazarus back from the dead after being dead for 4 days. And then one day, Jesus and his disciples get on the ship. And Jesus said, "We're going to cross the sea." Jesus is tired. He's exhausted. He's been preaching and teaching. So he goes down into the hull of the ship and he goes to sleep, and he is sleeping deep. Up on the top of the deck are these experienced commercial fishermen. They've been in the sea many times, but suddenly a storm comes, and it's a storm like they've never seen before. They fear that they're going to die. The boat is filling with water, and somebody remembers that Jesus was on the boat. So they went down and they asked Jesus a question: "Carest not that we perish?" As if Jesus is going to perish with them, or that he would save himself and allow them to perish. Jesus didn't answer them. He simply got up, walked on the deck of the ship, and simply said, "Peace, be still." Peace to the wind, be still. And he says, "Be still to the wave." Now, the word that is translated "be still" is the word that a man would use to tell his dog to stop biting. Jesus says to the wave, "Stop biting the ship," because as the waves were hitting the ship, they were putting holes in the ship, and the ship was filling with water. But when Jesus came, he told it to stop biting the ship. The winds have stopped. The waves have stopped. The disciples are no longer afraid. They're in awe of Jesus, but everything is not fixed because the ship still has holes in the ship. But this ship was still able to make it to its destination. All I want to say to you as I leave is that in this chamber, there may be some times when you have some cracks, where you have some fissures, where you even have some holes in the ship. But if somebody will remember that Jesus is in the house and call on Jesus, he will step up and make sure that you're able to do what he has called you to do. You can make it if you know that Jesus is with you. Whenever you feel like you can't go anymore, remember, he says, "I will never fail you nor forsake you." Remember, he says, "I will give you success if you will just be courageous, be strong, do not be weak." weak and wishy-washy, but stand up for that which is right and watch God bless this great assembly. Please stand for the prayer. Our God and our Father, we thank you for this time of sharing. We thank you, we praise you for the call and claim you put on these men and women in this assembly. We lift them up to you now, Father. Pray that you pour into them all that they poured out, that you will bless them and strengthen them and show them what you would have them to do for your people. Bless this chamber. In Jesus' name we pray. We play the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and that you give up for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good message. Doorkeepers, you may unlock the doors. Members, you may join the pastor in the South Ante room for some photos and give him thanks for being here. Reverend Castle, thank you for that message. We much appreciate it. Safe travels when y'all head back. Tell Bruce Norton I said hello. Put that back on. Make sure you're official. Members, our doctor of the day is brought to us by Representative Chuck Martin, Dr. Luke Lathrop. If you need those services, you know where Dr. Lathrop is, so we appreciate him being here. Appreciate Chairman Martin bringing our doctor of the day. Chair recognized Chairman Tarvin, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits. Chairman Tarvin.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Information and Audits has read the journal from the previous legislative day and found it to be correct. And just something else to think about. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Truer words were never spoken, Mr. Chairman. Truer words were never spoken. Chairman Tarvin, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to dispense with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. Mr. Clerk, will you read the resolution, establishing the order of business for the day?
Representative Administration of the 104th moves following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Reports of standing committees. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. First reading the bills and resolutions, the clerk will read.
House Bill 1505 by Representative Cummings, the 39th. Bill be titled Act to amend Code Section 10-1-393.3 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to prohibited use of purchase credit card.
Banks and banking.
House Bill 1506 by Representative Bell, the 75th. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 4, Chapter 11, and Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to dangerous instrumentalities and practices.
Public safety and homeland security.
House Bill 1507 by Representative Bell, the 75th. Bill be titled Act to amend Chapter 4, Title 34 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to minimum wage law.
Industry and labor.
House Bill 1508 by Representative Kelly, the 16th, and Rose, the 124th. Bill be titled Act to amend Code Section 27.2.6 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to trout license.
Game, fish, and parks.
House Resolution 1563 by Representative Westbrook of the 163rd, Gamble the 15th, Green of the 154th, Stevens of the 164th, Cannon of the 172nd, and others. Resolution creating the House Study Committee on Georgia's creative economy.
Creative arts and entertainment.
House Resolution 1564 by Representative Bennett of the 94th, Dickey the 145th, Carter of the 93rd, Cameron of the 1st, Lewis Ward of the 115th. A resolution creating the House Summit on Hunger and Food Insecurity.
Agriculture, consumer affairs.
House Resolution 1565 by Representative Okoye of the 102nd, Adenia of the 110th, Olalier of the 59th, Adesanya of the 53rd, and McLean of the 109th. A resolution designating March 21st as Georgia Nigerian Day.
Special rules.
House Resolution 1566 by Representative Neal the 79th, Willis of the 55th, Dickey the 145th. Resolution creating a House Study Committee on tax credits for convenience stores and qualified low-income census tracts.
Ways and means.
Senate Bill 580 by Senator Strickland the 17th. A bill be titled Act to amend an act providing a new charter for the city of Madison.
Intergovernmental coordination.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions, the clerk will read.
House Bill 1499 by Representative Cannon of the 58th, Park of the 107th, Beverly of the 143rd, Roberts of the 52nd, Bennett of the 94th, and others. A bill relating to the Department of Public Health. House Resolution 1502 by Representative Jones of the 60th. Resolution urging the senior living industry to study and implement rent control measures. House Resolution 1503 by Representative Bennett of the 94th, Cooper of the 45th, Roberts of the 52nd, Campbell of the 35th, Ramon of the 97th, and others. Resolution designating February of each year as Cholesterol Screening Awareness Month in the state of Georgia. House Resolution 1504 by Representative Knight of the 134th, Anilowitz of the 42nd, Bonner of the 73rd, Mathiak of the 74th, Camp of the 135th, and others. Resolution urging the United States Department of Energy to ensure the feasibility of tankless water heaters. House Resolution 1516 by Representative Thomas of the 65th, Glaze of the 67th. Resolution honoring the life of Mr. Dominic Anthony Turner and dedicating an intersection in his memory. House Resolution 1554 by Representative Smith of the 70th, Dickey of the 145th, Corbett of the 174th, Rhodes of the 124th, Smith of the 138th. The resolution creating the House Study Committee on Navigable Streams and Related Matters. Senate Bill 571 by Senator Lucas of the 26th, a bill to amend an act providing a new charter for the city of Sandersville. Senate Bill 572 by Senator Strickland of the 17th, a bill to authorize the assessment and collection of a technology fee by the Probate Court of Morgan County. Senate Bill 573 by Senator Strickland of the 17th, a bill to authorize the assessment and collection of a technology fee by the Magistrate Court of Morgan County.
Yes, sir.
Senate Bill 574 by Senator Strickland of the 17th, Cowsert of the 46th, Anderson of the 43rd, a bill to amend an act creating a new judicial circuit for the state of Georgia to be known as the Alcovy Judicial Circuit. Senate Bill 577 by Senator Jackson of the 41st, Butler of the 55th, Harrell of the 40th, Anderson of the 43rd, Davenport of the 44th, a bill to amend an act creating the State Court of DeKalb County, formerly known as the Civil and Criminal Court of DeKalb County. Through second readers.
Reports of standing committees, the clerk will read.
Representative John LaHood of the 175th District, Chairman of the Committee on Governmental Affairs, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Governmental Affairs has had under its consideration the following resolution of the House, instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Resolution 1418 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative John LaHood of the 175th District, Chairman. Representative Beth Camp of the 135th District, Chairman of the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Locals, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Locals had under its consideration following bills of the House and Senate and instructed me to report same back to the House with following recommendations. House Bill 1488 do pass. House Bill 1489 do pass. House Bill 1494 do pass. House Bill 1495 do pass. House Bill 1496 do pass. House Bill 1500 do pass. House Bill 1502 do pass. House Bill 1503 do pass. House Bill 1504 do pass. Senate Bill 531 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Beth Camp of the 135th District, Chairman. Representative Lynn Smith of the 70th District, Chairman of the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Natural Resources and Environment has had under its consideration the following resolution of the House and instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Resolution 1554 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Lynn Smith, the 70th District, Chairman. That completes the reading of the reports of standing committees.
Members, we'll move on to the local calendar, so you may want to get closer to your seat. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills. If there is no objection, we will vote on the local calendar as a whole with a recorded vote. Hearing none, it is so ordered. Mr. Clerk, will you read the local calendar?
House Bill 1488 by Representative McDonald, the 26th, Forsyth County. House Bill 1489 by Representative Saints of the 180th, Camden County. House Bill 1494 by Representative Jackson of the 165th, City of Garden City. House Bill 1495 by Representative Jackson of the 128th, City of Sandersville. House Bill 1496 by Representative Wiedauer of the 121st, Tacony County. House Bill 1500 by Representative Wilkerson of the 38th, City of Powder Springs. House Bill 1502 by Representative Momptown of the 17th, Baldwin County. House Bill 1503 by Representative Gamble of the 15th, City of Cartersville and Bartow County. House Bill 1504 by Representative Campbell of the 135th, Griffin-Spalding County Area Region. Senate Bill 531 by Senator Jackson of the 41st, DeKalb County.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bills? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall these bills now pass? All those in favor of passage of the bills on the local calendar will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? All members voted. If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the local calendar, the yeas are 160, the nays 1. These bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. Okay, members, we're ready to move on to morning orders. You may want to hear this. Members, we have about 20 or so morning orders. That's more than a slew. So here's what we're going to do. If you have a morning order and you have folks who have traveled from near or far to be here, you need to come up and make us aware of that. Make the messenger aware. I can't pick you all out. We're going to have 15 minutes total. For those of you who do not respect your neighbor, you will not have a morning order, and your friends and family will be disappointed. That's our posture. So if you'll come up and make the... So we're going to start with Representative Hughley for her morning order. She's recognized for a morning order. Representative Hughley and friends.
No, this is for
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. Today, we have a special opportunity to honor the first African-American lobbyist that ever came to this Georgia General Assembly. Yes, he is. And it's one thing to be first, but you know you've done a good job if others have followed you. So this morning, we'd like for Mr. Sam Dumas to stand, and I want you all to honor him appropriately.
Sam. All right. Yeah, man. Sam Dumas, the man. What's up? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Hutchinson for a morning order. And the Gwinnett delegation.
Good morning, colleagues. This morning, I am pleased to welcome Central Gwinnett High School. They're at the ropes because they could not fit in the gallery this morning. But we have 40 children from AP Government at Central Gwinnett and their teacher, Shannon Gagir, who's also a very good friend of mine. And I just want to welcome them. She brings students here every year, and I want to welcome them and to say thank you to Ms. Gagir for all her hard work in bringing students to the Capitol every year. Thank you. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Representative Tran for a morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize the Uchida family, if the Uchida family could stand. Mitsunobu Uchida came here to America in 1970 and Georgia in 1975 here in Georgia. They opened up Taito Karate. They are the longest school that has been open. They are the oldest martial arts school in Georgia and possibly the Southeast. They hold international tournaments. They've trained over 20,000 students, 500 of them being black belts. 2 of my sons will be joining them, representing Georgia and USA at an international karate tournament in Japan. Please welcome the Uchida family. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Representative Howard for a morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To my colleagues and all, I want to recognize the West Side High School basketball team from Augusta, Georgia, under the leadership of Coach Jerry Hunter, along with some of his staff, some of the administrators from the school and the Board of Education here today. We thank them for joining us. They have won 3 consecutive championships. I've heard some other championships, 3 consecutive championships in their division, and we thank God for them and thank God for leading them and for them being here today. So we celebrate them. But while we're celebrating, we also ask for a moment of silence for one of their coaches that passed on 2 days ago, one of the football coaches at the school, and they are traveling under a little duress, but we are grateful for them and we pray a word of comfort for them. And while I have the microphone, there's a lady with some gray hair on the back side. I better say happy birthday to her. This is her first time in the chambers. That's my wife. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Hilton for a morning order. We have less than 11 minutes left.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, today is an exciting day. Today is World Down Syndrome Day. And I would like, yes. Individuals with Down syndrome are taxpayers, they're voters, and they are productive and happy Georgians, and I want us all to recognize them. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Crawford for a morning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Friends, today I want to recognize a group of talented young student athletes from the Green Forest McCaleb Christian Academy. The Green Forest Christian Academy boys and girls varsity basketball teams both won the state championship a few weeks ago under the leadership of Coach Griffin and the leadership of Coach Culpepper. I'm very excited to invite them down to the Capitol. These young student athletes are not only talented, but they're very smart, and very quick thing about them, they come from all over the world, and they're able to work together and still win state championships. And I told them that the best team in the state is the State House. And so they're here to recognize the work that we do. If you would, please stand, Green Forest, and be recognized. And we're going to go and take a picture on the South Wing steps. So thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Martinez for a morning order.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today to recognize a great Hispanic. His Planta Freddy Hernandez is here with his wife. This is an independent media outlet that reaches over 700 people, Hispanic people, a month. And he has earned many Emmy Awards in 2021, 2022, and 2023. CFO Freddy Hernandez has been recognized with many awards as 50 most influential Latinos in Georgia. And I also want to recognize my good friend Jefferson Dominguez.
Jefferson, owner of the Jefferson Construction, great Latino leader. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Schofield for a morning order.
Thank you, Madam. Colleagues, March 21st is Single Parent Day across Georgia. I recognize former House Representative Valencia Stovall, DeKalb Commissioner Larry Johnson and his beautiful wife, and all the single parents across Georgia. Will you please stand? To those who are single parents by choice or circumstances, we cheer for you, we pray for you, and we thank you guys for being here today. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Cummings for a morning order.
Any members from the Cobb delegation here? From Cobb? Today I'd like to recognize District Attorney Flynn Brody from Cobb County. Flynn Brody oversaw the prosecution, the successful prosecution in the Ahmaud Arbery case. This was a very difficult case. It was a racially charged case, and District Attorney Brody faced a lot of pressure from many sides nationally with the case. But he tried the case the way that he saw fit, put the best prosecution team in place, and we saw what the result was. So we'd like to recognize Flynn Brody. Congratulations.
We're running out of time, but I've got a few more I can recognize before we're out. Chair recognizes Representative Okoye for a morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, today is Nigeria's Day at the Capitol, and I have the leaders of Nigeria in Georgia all here up in the gallery. Please help me to welcome them. And ladies and gentlemen, I have the most beautiful woman in my eyes up there, and that's my wife. Please help me to recognize her. Thank you.
Smart man, right?
Chair recognizes Representative Kendrick for a morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a special guest in the gallery, Shanteria Shellman Austin Sampson, and she is a visionary leader. She does a lot of work within the technology space as well as innovative initiatives including OHUB's program and Cold Start. She also has her friend and wonderful husband in the gallery, Rodney Sampson, but they embody what it means to be a early startup investor doing great work here in the state of Georgia and in the technology space. So could you please rise and give a round of applause to Shanteria and Rodney Sampson. And they will be taking pictures down here in the anteroom. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Bazemore for a morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I rise to introduce to some and to others, you know him as Palmer William Jr. He is a native of Camden, Alabama. His career involves performances in 4 of Tyler Perry's national touring productions, I Don't Know What to Do, Mama's Big Happy Family, The Marriage Counselor, and Laugh to Keep from Crying. He's also an author and other things, and I know we're running out of time, so please stand. And he is also accompanied with Ambassador Lenore Peterson, our friend. He will be taking pictures in the anteroom. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative McLean and others for morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, today is a great day. We're having a blood drive today, and the person I want to recognize, and we want to recognize, is a person up in the gallery, Don Bagley. Don, he has achieved the status of what we call a super donor. So Don, if you'll stand up in his wife, a super donor, he's donated 300 pints of blood in the past 17 years, and he's planning on giving some more. He's accompanied by his wife, but I want you to say, Don, thank you very much. He will be taking pictures. We have a resolution for him. And today, please go out between this building and CLOB and donate some blood. Because Don is a super donor, 300 pints. Let's give him a hand.
Chair recognizes Representative Jackson and Rahman for morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hello, everybody. The Ismaili community is here today. If you have not seen them, they have actually set up the beautiful display downstairs for Navroz. And so if you can, go downstairs, say hello to them. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Representative Jackson to talk about one of their organizations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And also we want to recognize Aga Khan Development Network. We got a resolution, and based on time, come on down and welcome to your house too. We yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Campbell for a morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, today I am thrilled and honored to celebrate and recognize our esteemed Georgia Poet Laureate, Chelsea Rathburn. And I encourage all artists, poets, storytellers, writers, and creators to join us today to celebrate National Poetry Day, because our poets have been recognized for decades as unique leaders and connectors in our society. Our esteemed Poet Laureate, Chelsea Rathburn, joins us here. She was appointed by Governor Kemp in 2019 to serve as the Ambassador of the Arts to expand access, opportunity, and interest in poetry for all Georgians. She is a champion for the arts. She also judges the Poet Laureate's Prize, and she has received so many awards. Words can heal, inspire, wound, move, motivate, challenge us. And today I recognize Chelsea Rathburn as the leader that she is, connecting us all, each other, understanding each other through her words and her stories. Please all join us and recognize Georgia's Poet Laureate, Chelsea Rathburn.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dempsey for a morning order. We're about out of time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for letting us be the last today. I want to
welcome Leadership Rome, the 41st class, I believe. Amazing. That's strong and good. They are also joined by Miss Rome. So if y'all would stand up and everybody give them a big hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Moore for a morning order.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I'd like to recognize former Representative Barbara Mobley. She's in the House. She served from 1993 to 2004. Barbara Mobley. Okay. Secondly, I have a resolution here. We'd like to recognize Tamika Johnson. She's the coordinator of Over the Chain Kickball League for adult women. Would you please come on down to the third floor and allow us to recognize you there? Would you stand and could you please give her a hand? She's celebrating her 10 years here, and maybe she can teach us how to win next year's football game here at the House. Okay, I did that too quick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes morning orders. We're moving on to the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 469. Senate Bill 469.
Senate Bill 469 by Senator Estevez the 6th, Huffstetler the 52nd, Butler the 55th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 11 of Chapter 3 entitled 20 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to the Georgia Higher Education Savings Plan so as to increase the maximum amount of contributions allowed per beneficiary. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Higher Education, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Wiedauer to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senate Bill 469 does two things. Currently, there's a cap of $235,000 in college savings account. This just removes that cap and to be set as a reasonable maximum amount determined by the board. It also increases the tax deductible amount going into these from $4,000 to $5,000 for a single filer and $8,000 to $10,000 for a married filing joint. That is it. I ask for your favorable consideration.
There are no questions.
I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? This is a bill most will want to vote on. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 155, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption of Senate Bill 112. Senate Bill 112.
Senate Bill 112 by Senator Anna Duarte of the 31st, Robertson of the 29th, Payne of the 54th, Gooch of the 51st, and others, be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4, Title 20 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to vocational, technical, and adult education. This bill having referred to the Committee on Higher Education, that committee recommends this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Stevens to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 112
is a high school diploma for Adult Learners Act. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got over 1 million folks in Georgia that do not have a high school diploma. Senate Bill 112 creates a 5-year pilot program for adults over 21 years of age who dropped out of school to obtain a real high school diploma. Once they get the diploma, they will move into technical college system, apprenticeships, the military, and other high-demand fields. Based on this highly successful program, and you've got a handout on your sheet on your table there, it's run by the Goodwill agencies in 9 other states called the Excel Centers. This program has proven track record using education to lift people out of poverty, empowering them to change their life trajectory. Senate Bill 112 creates a public-private partnership with TCSG and the workforce development programs. It is envisioned that 3 proposed sites would be around the state in Savannah, Macon, and Columbus. The Excel Centers will be located in a dedicated community building where you can have a wraparound services, which is a very key component for these folks 21 years of age to 45, for daycare, transportation, assistance, life coaches, and career counseling. These classes are offered year-round, daytime and in the evening, and are provided at no cost to the student. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what the bill does. It is a pilot program. We already have successful programs. As you might remember, Senate Bill 204 is one that we did a few years ago that had to do with those up to age 21. We also have an amazing successful program down in Hinesville, Georgia, with the Youth Challenge program, again, for the youth. This is one that centers on those adults, 21 to 45, that will give them an opportunity to succeed. Madam Chairman, that's what the bill does. I'll accept any questions.
You have a couple questions. The chair recognizes Representative Kennard for a question. Kennard.
Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Is this also a dual enrollment possibility? They can take the high school courses and college classes at the technical college at the same time?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Is there also a possibility for dual enrollment while they're taking the high school classes to also go to college?
You know, that's what Senate Bill 204 did and the way that it worked back when, but this one I would believe you're probably going to need to get your high school diploma first. Again, understand a lot of these folks can't read on a 6th grade level, so they're going to need intensive training before they can move on to that.
Okay,
thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight for a question.
To my friend in the well, isn't it true that as we looked at original versions of the bill, that funding was to be used for all kind of things, including purchases of buildings, et cetera, but through our House committee process, you know, we've now produced a bill that only allows the dollars to be spent on the education of the person. That's my first parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, sir, you're exactly right, and that's probably the most important piece of this legislation. As you know, the wraparound services are provided by the Goodwill Industries already for the folks that work there. This bill, thanks to the chairman of the committee that got this very narrowly crafted so that only the education piece is to be funded. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Madam Secretary, parliamentary inquiry. But isn't it true that this bill is not necessarily specific, and this is the concern I have, there are several programs out there that wish to get involved in this. It is my understanding, and to my friend as well, isn't it true that this is not necessarily geared towards one particular program?
I'm not sure that this particular bill is geared towards the Excel program, which is primarily housed or will be housed within the Goodwill Industries.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
The chair recognizes Chairman Hatchett for a question.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I can't see it in here, and I may have overlooked it, and you may have stated. When is the effective date? When does this program begin, the pilot program begin?
We have, it's in our 2025 budget, as you might recall. It should start, it's already in our budget, matter of fact, so it should start right away as soon as we can get it funded.
Well, the reason, if you'll take another question, is
Certainly.
it not true that I was asking because there are differences in what the Senate proposed funding and what we proposed funding, so I was very interested in when this would actually begin.
Just got a text from the Senate. We got, of course, the governor placed in his budget $5 million, and the Senate just put $2 million back in. It should start as soon as the governor signs the bill. Madam Speaker, I appreciate the questions, and if there's no more questions, I'll yield the will and ask for your favorable consideration.
The gentleman has yielded the well. The chair recognizes Chairman Martin to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do want to speak to Senate Bill 112. It's come along an arduous road, and while I respect Chairman Stevens' talk about the Excel program, this bill was in higher education, created and contemplated so that multiple vendors, certainly the Excel program can work with TCSG and be part of that, but so can other vendors. Here in Georgia, with this bill and educating adults that fall into this position, we didn't pick 3 cities. We didn't pick a vendor. We gave the opportunity for all people that provide this service to provide, and in fact, we provided for at least 2 people, at least 2 vendors. Could be more, but at least 2 vendors would get the opportunity to do this, so that we could get a good idea of how the pilot program would work. I will say this, as chairman of higher education, we always have people coming to us for allocations of funding for education. The treasure that the state has, both in terms of capital and money, is limited to do that. And this is, quite frankly, an expensive program. I think Chairman Hatchett, if I can invoke his name, mentioned that earlier with the allocation of resources. So I just wanted to state and be fair to the House that your higher education committee on both sides of the aisle have agreed to focus this program on the people in need, but to focus it broadly on vendors. And I would draw everyone's attention to the section of the bill 50 through line 60 that say how this can be offered, and particularly in lines 59 through 61, that funds would be distributed to those vendors upon completion of courses toward the attainment of graduation. We're not interested in seat time, we're interested in results. So, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to make those clarifying points that if this bill moves forward, there are some differences between the House position and the Senate position, and I would ask the House to hold our position. It is focused on people, not vendors, and with this program, we'll get a good idea after the pilot period, but I wanted to make that clear to you all that this is not focused on a particular vendor. This is focused on people in Georgia. And I'd ask each and every member to take that into consideration and vote your conscience in your district. With that, I'll yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. The chair recognizes Representative Reese to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Stevens and Chairman Martin, for your introduction of the bill. I want to speak to the bill, and naturally, I am in favor of this bill. But I'm not going to digest the bill itself. I'm going to focus more on the conditions that we have right here in the state of Georgia. Many of you know that I was born and raised in a very small town here in Georgia, in Wilkinson County, a town called Gordon. And when I think back to my hometown, even right now as I go to visit my relatives that are still in that area, I see individuals that could have opportunities in life if they simply had a high school education. For most of us in here who are very well educated, having a high school education just seems like something that should be so basic, should be so easy. But for so many Georgians, every day, something as simple as a high school education is hard to come across. I think it is without question and without doubt that we have one of the best technical college systems in the state of Georgia right here in the nation. And I'm convinced that with the partners that we will have with Senate Bill 112, we will have an opportunity to extend greater chances, greater opportunities for individuals to simply take care of their families, to feed their families, to raise their children. Because many of you know that an individual that grows up without a high school degree, their children are 50% likely to be high school dropouts themselves. This is us ending a cycle of poverty right here with Senate Bill 112. This is an opportunity for us to have an impact that would not only impact Metro Atlanta, but take those impacts into the rural parts of the state where we need the most help. In Columbus alone, we have 46,000 people over the age of 18 that do not have a high school degree. This program here will give us an opportunity to give those that are already intimately working in our community, give them the tools that they need to help make our state better. As we look at maintaining our status here in this state as a great economic driver, an engine driver, we have to think about the fact that we must have a qualified workforce to take us along the way. This bill here will go a long way in helping us increase that workforce so that we will have the individuals that we need to do the work right here in the state of Georgia. Maintaining our competitiveness right here in the state of Georgia. I'm in full support of this bill, and I ask that my colleague will join us in sending a strong message that here we're not interested in leaving anybody behind in this state. You may have had some challenges early in your life in high school, but we want to give you that second chance. We want to give you that second opportunity to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. We live on a premise in our society that if you work hard, if you believe, if you contribute, you too have the right to be successful. This bill here helps us even the playing field and allows everyone who wants the opportunity to be educated, to have that opportunity to be educated and be a productive part of our society. Madam Speaker, I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? For what purpose does Chairman Dempsey rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that our House committee process added a very important pay-for-performance component to this bill that was not in the original version that we received? And what this says is that you only get paid if you are advancing and ultimately graduating students with a high school diploma.
Chair is sure the lady knows of which she speaks. The chair recognizes Representative Gladney. For what purpose does she rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, ma'am.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that while there are limited opportunities for members to enter the military with a GED, this bill will afford more allowance for individuals to earn their high school equivalency and to join the military?
The chair is certain that the lady knows that of which she speaks. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 143, the nays were 23. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 520. Senate Bill 520.
Senate Bill 520 by Senator Cowser, the 46th, Kirkpatrick, the 32nd, Strickland, and the 17th, be entitled an act to amend Title 19 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to domestic relations so as to change and clarify provisions relating to income withholding orders. This bill having referred to the Committee on Juvenile Justice, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Wiedauer to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senate Bill 520 is a department bill for DHS. It simply amends Title 19 to align state and federal terminology by replacing the term income deduction order with income withholding order, and to amend clarify income withholding process. That's all it does. It's a long bill because it gets repeated in there about 150 times, but I will stand for any questions.
There are no questions.
I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 166, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption of Senate Bill 472. Senate Bill 472.
Senate Bill 472 by Senator Albers, the 56th, Gooch, the 51st, Strickland, the 17th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 36 of Chapter 1 entitled 10 of the official code of Georgia and Taylor relating to online marketplace requirements. This bill having referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Gaines to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senate Bill 472 follows up on the work that we did a couple years ago when we passed the Informed Consumers Bill that targets organized retail crime in the state. Really, it closes a loophole that certain online marketplaces have found to ensure that all online marketplaces are under the same legislation we passed a couple years ago for high-volume sellers to make sure they're disclosing information in an effort as we work to prevent organized retail crime, where individuals are coming into retail stores, stealing items off shelves and reselling them online. And that's what the bill does, Madam Speaker. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
There are no questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield the will.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 167, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption of Senate Bill 368. Senate Bill 368.
Senate Bill 368 by Senator Williams, the 25th, Burns, the 23rd, Dolezal, the 27th, Robertson, the 29th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 and Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to government, transparency, and campaign finance. This bill having referred to the Committee on Judiciary. That committee recommends this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I bring you to this morning SB 368. Very simple bill. It simply prohibits foreign donations to candidates, campaigns, PACs, or any of those type of campaign-related committees. It also says that if you're an agent of a foreign government and you're testifying or reaching out to a government official or a committee, then you have to identify yourself as an agent of that foreign government. Quite frankly, I think this is a pretty good bill, and I would certainly appreciate your support, as would the good senator.
Chair, there is a question. If you care to yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair
Be glad to.
recognizes Chairman Chokas for a question.
Certainly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Chairman Powell, in the donation, is there a carve-out for family members that give contributions to other family members that may not be citizens of the state of Georgia or citizens of the United States?
No, sir, there is no carve-out in this. If they're a foreign national or an organization, they cannot make a donation.
Even if it's further, do you further yield?
Be glad to.
Yeah, even if it's their spouse or their children or their family members?
Whatever the gentleman says, if he thinks that's so. But I'd recommend that if you had any of your kin folks from Greece, I'd advise them just buy lunch for you.
There's more if you want.
Madam Speaker, if there's no more questions, I'd be glad to yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
The gentleman has yielded the well. The chair recognizes Representative Reeves to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. Colleagues, in favor of Senate Bill 368, since the 1974 FEC regulations enacted following Watergate, foreign nationals have been prohibited from giving money at the federal, state, and local levels as a matter of law at the federal level. That means that Swiss billionaires like Mr. Hansborg Weiss cannot legally donate to campaigns. Yet, in reviewing tax filings, the New York Times has found that that Swiss billionaire has given at least $208 million from 2016 to 2020 to a wide array of groups who engaged in political activity. And so what this bill does is it ensures in Georgia we have a clear prohibition for foreign nationals participating in our elections. Election integrity and security is important. And what we want to do is make sure that the ballot box in Georgia is sacred and it is there for citizens and it is not cheapened by foreign influence and money on our elections. And I applaud Chairman Powell for sponsoring this great bill in the House to make sure that foreign money stays out of Georgia elections. And I encourage you to support Senate Bill 368, and I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 161, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption of Senate Bill 230. Senate Bill 230.
Senate Bill 230 by Senator Brass, the 28th Eccles, the 49th Gooch, the 51st, and others. Being titled Act to Amend Chapter 5 of Title 49 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to programs of protection for children, so as to revise provisions relating to the Foster Parents Bill of Rights. This bill, having referred to the Committee on Juvenile Justice, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Wiedauer to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I rise today with Senate Bill 230. It's the Foster Parent Bill of Rights. Obviously, we have way too many children in foster care, but the people that step up to take care of them are the people we need to encourage and protect. This simply does that by defining some of the abilities that they have as a foster parent. I will stand for any questions.
There are no questions.
I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 169, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption, Senate Bill 420. Senate Bill 420.
Senate Bill 420 by Senators Anna Duarte of the 31st, Goodman of the 8th, Beach of the 21st, Cows of the 46th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 and Title 2 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions relative to agriculture so as to prohibit the acquisition of possessory interest in certain land by certain foreign persons and entities. This bill I referred to the Committee on Judiciary. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Clerk will read the chair recognizes Representative Clark to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today I'm excited to be carrying Senate Bill 420. It's a passion of mine. I serve in the military, and it's vital to our national security. I currently serve in the military at the highest levels, and we've discussed the threats to our national security posed by foreign adversaries who are tampering with our food supply by owning our agricultural land. There are two things that are vital to every country's national security: our water supply and our food supply. This bill simply protects our valuable agricultural land and produces our food supply. This bill protects all immigrants who come here to pursue the American dream for themselves, while at the same time safeguarding every one of our communities. I want to make it clear that I would not be up here supporting this bill if it discriminated against anyone. I've received many emails from people who have been fed false information that is nowhere in this bill. This bill is straightforward in its meaning and only prevents foreign adversaries, the governments with hostile intent against our nation, communities, from owning their agricultural lands. This bill follows all guidelines of the Fair Housing Law, and I'm proud of the hard work that has been put in to this bill. I fully believe that the bill will easily hold up in court of law if it was challenged. In closing, I just ask that this body set aside political rhetoric and vote for a bill that protects our national security and all of our people, regardless of where they come from. And with that, I'll take any questions, but we spent a lot of time on this bill. You can read the bill. It's very simple, very straightforward, and just simply protects us from those foreign adversaries that threaten our country and our communities. Madam Speaker, I'll be glad to take any questions.
You have a couple questions. The chair recognizes Representative Park for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the gentleman, do you yield for two questions?
I yield.
While I appreciate the intent of the bill, is it not true that this bill is providing an exception for foreign agents of foreign adversaries to purchase agricultural land and military land here in Georgia on lines 59 to 64? In particular, given the concerns that you've raised, I don't know why we're bringing a bill to the floor that would allow foreign agents of countries from foreign adversaries to, again, purchase agricultural land and military land with the exceptions that have been included here in this bill, given the national security interests that you've raised. So
I think what we have done on this bill, very balanced, because you have the fair housing, so you have that balance to hold up in court of law, and what we're all about in this house is following the law, having that balance. So if someone wants to come over here, they could have been a past dictator in one of these countries, and they're going to come here, live, pursue the American dream, and they're allowed entry into here, then they're living 6 months out of 12 months in the United States, or 2 months out of 12 months in Georgia. We are a country that's wide-armed, open arms, saying, hey, come here and live, but there needs a balance so we know you're coming here to live, not here to buy up our agricultural lands and mess with our food supply.
So just to clarify again, you are okay allowing foreign agents of countries that are foreign adversaries to purchase land near military bases in Georgia and in farms. Thank you. One more question, if I may. On lines 76 to lines 81, is it not true that this bill and the bill that y'all are proposing would allow a company such as China to lease land for purposes of agricultural research and development, testing, developing, producing crops? Can you help me understand why, when multiple times throughout this committee process, we've said that food security is one of our top priorities, that we are now codifying an exception for a Chinese company or a company owned by one of these foreign adversaries to engage in the development and testing of agricultural products?
Well, I'll say this. I mean, we try to work with every country, even our foreign adversaries, having that balance, because you have to have a balance of working together, right? Because in the end, we want to all be on the same page. We do some research together, but when we do that, it's always being overlooked. Keep an eye on what's going on. So we've had that balance of we can do research. They can come if they're working on studies and all that, but we're working alongside them. So, you're able to keep an eye on that.
Again,
And I'll say,
yes, please.
when you say agents coming over here, we have our departments who always keep an eye on foreign adversaries, what they're doing coming over here. But at the same time, we want to be open arms to those who are actually pursuing the American dream.
I just think for purposes of consistency, when we're saying national security and particularly talking about protecting our food supply, I'm confused as to why there are explicit exceptions in this bill that would allow foreign agents and foreign adversaries to continue to, again, engage in the testing of agricultural products and to purchase land near military bases here in the state of Georgia. But I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Majority Whip Burchett for a question.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. To my friend in the well, is Jim and yield?
I yield.
Very good. Thank you for bringing the bill. Isn't it true that the intent of the bill is to go after bad actors that may be here conducting nefarious activity around our military bases?
That is true.
Very good. Isn't it also true that currently in the state of Georgia, we do have some companies that are working in good faith with the state of Georgia and with the people of Georgia and the citizens of Georgia to further the American dream? Is that not true?
That is absolutely true.
So isn't it true that while we're seeking to address issues where foreign adversaries are coming to the state of Georgia to conduct nefarious activities such as surveillance on our military bases, such as growing of marijuana like everybody's seen in the news recently down in my part of the woods, isn't it true that we're after those folks and not after the folks that are actually here to seek out the American dream, to partner with us? So we've made an exception for companies and people that are doing that.
Absolutely true. We've tried to do our absolute best with the Constitution, fair housing, because we are the country of freedom. We're the country that it's the melting pot of the world coming here chasing freedom. So we want to make sure to follow every law, but also have the teeth to protect our communities and our nation.
Thank you for the bill.
With that, I'll yield the well, Madam Chair, and I ask you please vote Senate Bill 420. Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Members, in the wisdom, as I say, of the Rules Committee, we have House Rule 33.3 has been imposed on this bill, so we'll have 30 minutes for those opposed, 30 minutes for those in favor, 20 minutes for the minority report, and 20 minutes for the chair's time, or any portion thereof. We'll begin with Representative Al. Representative Al is recognized to present to the bill.
Good morning. Let me first say I'm very disappointed and dismayed that I have to speak against this bill today. So I'd like to open by making two statements, both of which can be true at the same time. Number one, national security and defense against hostile foreign regimes is a vital goal that I and everyone in this body should prioritize. Number two, SB 420 is a bad bill that does not serve that goal. Now, before I get into details, let me just acknowledge the elephant in the room. When you're a legislator who looks like me and who has the cultural background that I do, no amount of parsing the legal or the social nuance of such bills will prevent the suspicion that I get and the accusations I will draw for being a legislator who looks like me speaking against it. In my 2 terms in the Georgia General Assembly, I personally have been accused of being an agent of the Chinese Communist Party, a spy, a plant, un-American, and a foreign asset. And that's just this week. For the record, I am none of those things, in case you need that clarified for you. But this reflexive, florid reaction and the assumptions that people make about people who look like me, my loyalties, my intent, because of what I look like, because of the language I grew up speaking, because of where my family is from, is in fact part of the phenomenon that makes SB 420 such a bad bill. Because SB 420 and the other bills we've seen like it, I want to note that this is actually just one of 5 bills that we've seen introduced this term, including HB 1093, HB 246, and HB 452 from last year. These bills aim to weaponize racism, xenophobia, and anti-immigrant sentiment while wrapping itself in the cloak of national security and patriotism. Bills like this don't protect America. Bills like this are un-American. So ironically, the communities that these bills target may understand better than any of us in this room the threats posed by the foreign adversaries cited in this bill, because some of those who may be targeted by this bill fled those very countries of origin intentionally, choosing instead to come to the United States for the promise of freedom and a nation united not just by any one single race or religion, but by a system of democratic principles and the promise of a country we continue to build together. In committee earlier this year, the representative from Loganville noted that his parents fled an oppressive regime in Cuba in search of a better life for their children. As Cuba is considered a foreign adversary on this list cited in this bill, his family may well have found it more difficult to realize their brighter future under this law. The representative from Norcross notes that he and his family were considered non-resident aliens for a period of time when they first immigrated to this country from the Philippines, and that over his childhood, his parents left the state for months or longer many times, both for work and to care for ailing family members back in the Philippines. This type of behavior is considered essentially suspect in this bill. The representative from the 103rd District, the governor's floor leader, is Korean American, but her last name is Hong, which is a common Chinese name. Under this bill, a realtor might think a little harder, might ask a few more questions, might be more concerned about the risk before selling or leasing her property compared to another buyer. This prejudicial treatment of different categories of people, regardless of realized harm, is in fact the core of discrimination. Clumsy bills like this make the classic mistake of conflating immigrants with the countries that they are from. Some basic questions we should be asking here as we read through this bill. How are we to determine if someone is an agent of an adversarial government? Who's doing that investigation? What would trigger that suspicion? And would that suspicion be applied equally to everyone looking to buy or lease property? When we create a disparate impact on potential property owners based on their country of origin, we run into the possibility of violating the Federal Fair Housing Act, which protects people in this country from discrimination when buying or leasing a home. The point was made in an earlier committee hearing that bills like this actually do not target countries of origin, which is a protected class. Rather, they target alienage, which is not a protected class. So I asked them why this bill doesn't target all aliens. For example, aliens from Canada, from the Netherlands, Italy, the United Kingdom, and Germany. And I named those 5 countries because those are the top 5 countries owning the largest portion of foreign-owned agricultural land in the United States. When you write a bill potentially discriminating against individuals only from certain countries, regardless of those individuals' immigration status, regardless of those individuals' criminality or intent, and regardless of which countries you choose to restrict, you will be violating federal law. Moreover, if our goal is, in fact, national security, there's nothing in this bill that precludes U.S. citizens or legal residents from any other background from taking money, from acting as agents of hostile foreign governments in order to buy property. Because this bill does not target intent, it restricts rights based on national origin, which is illegal. Legality aside, let's put that to the side for the moment. This bill, whether explicitly or not, paints a picture that residents from certain parts of this world cannot be trusted. They are essentially suspect and potentially traitorous simply by dint of their nationality. Think about the message this sends to the international community. Think about the message this sends to the business partners we've been proud to welcome and cultivate in this state, bringing vehicle and battery plants, manufacturing, huge technology and export industries, and thousands of jobs that come with them. Think about what this tells our constituents who have come from all over the world. If this body votes to place restrictions on their friends, families, and neighbors from building the very American dream the sponsors of this bill cite over and over and over again, I love this country. I love this state. And for that reason, I ask you to vote no on SB 420. There is a way to serve these goals of protecting our national security without writing blatantly discriminatory bills. And there's certainly a better way to serve that goal without trumpeting around the world that Georgia is the #1 place to live, work, and raise a family, but then turns to certain Georgians from certain countries and backgrounds and says, except not for you. We can do better than this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Lady has a question. You yielded the well. Ladies yielded the well. Representative Derek Jackson, recognized to speak to the bill. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So here we go again. This body wants to pass a bill that's going to tie up taxpayer dollars in litigation, going against federal law, state law. And as I listened to the presenter, I put my prepared notes back into my pocket. I just have the bill itself, because there was a couple of things, Mr. Speaker, I realized that was mentioned during the presentation of this Senate Bill 420, and that was national security, something I know something about. Not questioning no one else's military experience, but I served 22 years in the Navy, 7 deployments, 4 combat missions, 2 special operations, and I served in the Pentagon, and I also served with our allies. And in the Pentagon and with our NATO allies, there are different countries, different ethnicities and races, serving to help the United States to bolster their posture around national security. But as the presenter was talking, I was asking myself, where's the national security risk? I do not see it in this bill. Do not see it in this bill. Lines 28 through 42 has nothing to do with national security. Several loopholes, a way to discriminate and violate the federal law. I see on page 3, lines 50 through 55, I see loopholes, nothing about national security in lines 50 to 55. And if I sent this bill to my former colleagues at the Pentagon, they would say this bill would do absolutely nothing to strengthen our national security. Lines 58 through 63, I see loopholes. We don't deal with loopholes when it comes to national security. We don't deal with loopholes. We strengthen our national security. It has nothing to do with if someone purchased a home within 10 miles of a military installation. That tells me you know nothing about cybersecurity. Our number one risk right now in national security is cybersecurity. That's our number one risk. But that explains to me you know nothing about national security. This bill will not address national security. I see loopholes. I see discrimination. I see something that's unconstitutional. Lines 82 through 91. I see discrimination. It has nothing to do with national security. Nothing. When we are at risk and when we are under attack, we do the right things to make sure we strengthen our security. In 2016, there was no gates around this building and where we serve right now in 2016. But there's a gate on the perimeter of this building. Why? Because January 6th occurred. We strengthen. We do the things that we need to do to strengthen our security. We don't discriminate. We don't discriminate. And we certainly do not say we're doing this towards patriotism. Spare me of that. There's nothing in this bill that's patriotic. Nothing. Nothing in this bill is patriotic. Our country is built around diversity. If you look at NATO, it's diverse. Nothing around security is in this bill. And I yield you all. If you want to talk about national security, you vote no on Senate Bill 420, and let's have a real conversation around national security. I yield the well.
The gentleman is yielded the well. Representative Lim is recognized. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by saying that I too quite love America and Americans. Also, yes, national security is very important. Human rights are also very important, and the current governmental regimes in the countries targeted by this bill, among them China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, give rise to many obvious concerns of both. National security aside, with many of these countries being nuclear powers, I want to shine a light on the human rights issues, the Chinese governmental treatment of Uyghurs, Falun Gong practitioners, the Russian governmental treatment of dissidents, LGBT people, among those. Myself, I am part Chinese, but my national origin is, as the representative from Norcross, actually of the Philippines. Now, this country is not targeted by this bill, but it's important that I was born abroad during a brutal dictatorship and lived through the first color revolution of the world, that is the yellow, or people power revolution in 1986, to overthrow that dictatorship. And as I've learned, and as I've said, from this well before, I represent a population that is almost 50% foreign-born immigrants, many of whom have told me harrowing stories of their escape from brutal Soviet, Middle Eastern, African, Southeast Asian, Latin American, and other regimes in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and aughts, all coming to America for a better life and ultimately making substantial contributions to our society, including contributing substantially to our economy here in this state, which leads to my concerns about this bill. I am worried that because of its provisions, many of which are still unclear, that it will root out people who are doing good, including for our economy, while doing nothing to help our national security. One of those provisions is stating that this bill does not apply to U.S. citizens and legal residents. But again, the phrase legal resident, as I've said in other bills similar to this in committee, has many possible definitions, including within the Georgia Code itself, i.e. Title 49 on social services. Whether or not, as this bill does attempt to cover, people are going to be gone for 2 or more months. That is left unclear. Now, in committee, again, on a similar bill, when I asked that question, whether legal resident could be defined as lawful permanent resident, I noted that in the Florida legislation that has already been enjoined by the 11th Circuit, they at least did define that, but this bill does not. But that is just one problem of vagueness and lack of clarity in this bill. It is that these provisions are both under and over-inclusive to meet the interest that it's stating to meet. You are not catching people you want to catch. It was stated in committee that even a foreign government official from one of these countries could buy land so long as they are citizens or legal residents, or even if they're not, so long as they aren't gone for those periods of time, which is certainly not impossible. I also believe, let's be real, that bad actors, spies, columns, agents, whatever you want to call them, will not be caught or afraid of this bill. Who will be caught are everyday folks. Often, again, people escaping from brutal governments of these countries, already so traumatized by those experiences and fearful of government, yet wanting to make a better life here in democratic America. And who often, more often than not, agree with our prevailing opinion on the brutality of these regimes, but who are now, under this bill, going to be afraid of being suspected as an agent of that regime, a word that this bill provides little guidance, even in the current version, as to how that, if not be defined, be actually investigated. If you are here to take the term legal resident to mean lawful permanent resident, as was stated by my colleague, you would be barring asylees and refugees from countries like Cuba, who don't automatically, to be clear, become, quote, lawful permanent residents the moment they gain that status. You'd be preventing them from buying land. You're going to strike fear as well in people like my parents before they, like myself and all of my family, became lawful permanent residents. Before that, we were lawful non-resident aliens, even though we had every intention of staying in America indefinitely, and for me, obviously ended up doing so. My mom doesn't particularly believe in government. She has a hard time voting even for me because of her experiences in the Philippines, and she has to overcome those tendencies every single time she goes to the ballot box. In fact, the first time our family even filled out the US Census, my brother and I had to fill it out because my parents were scared of being tracked. Now, both she and my dad, before and after they bought property here, which is again part of that so-called American dream, would leave Georgia for long periods of time. In my dad's case, to work still in the United States, but not Georgia, while my family lived in Georgia. And in my mom's case, to go home to the Philippines to take care of family, 12 time zones away. We weren't rich, so even now, we stretch trips when we can do those trips that last few months, or at least several weeks, so our family can actually spend substantial time together. They would be fearful about this bill and about at least being suspected under it, even though they are legitimate actors. Again, it's clear that this bill is specific to certain countries, and I've already said I'm not originally from China. But again, let's be real. The perception from those who will implement this bill and on whom this bill will be implemented will amalgamate certain groups together. My parents know this. Hate against Asian Pacific Americans, as it is for other groups, is real. And so they would have valid reasons to think that this would have an impact on them and that they would be ensnared in the enforcement. You may also think, well, this bill attempts to exempt residential property and to apply only to residential land. But what about homes on agricultural land? Unclear. Many foreign workers we know work in agricultural rural areas. In the end, you may just say, tough, people like you will have to face some exclusions, but will still have opportunities if you work hard. To that first, I say, let us not forget, the original colonists who tilled our soil in America and became America's founding fathers were themselves escaping an oppressive British regime and able to claim here agricultural land. Second, I think this is ultimately disingenuous because human rights aside, we know Georgia's economy is strong in no small part because of foreign investment in trade. So moving away from individuals, think of the economic impact, at least, that this uncertain law will have on businesses and the way that our higher ed institutions who have relationships with these countries for research will have to deal with. That uncertainty comes not just from the unclear definitions in the language of this specific bill, but also, yes, from the 11th Circuit litigation that has enjoined the similar Florida law. The law is not exactly the same, but it is clear that that order states that the plaintiffs have a substantial likelihood of success based on the fact not on fair housing, but on preemption by federal law, specifically the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act. I am a securities attorney and have written anti-money laundering procedures for brokers, and I will tell you they are extensive. So not only are we creating an additional regulatory burden, something that we say we don't want, but we're doing so in ways that, again, create that uncertainty, not only because this will be litigated, but because without litigation even, you will have scared legitimate businesses away. And that was something that was testified to in committee. I will end by saying, I actually do think we need to take a comprehensive look at what businesses we're supporting and those who own the means of production. That can be a national security concern. It's just that this bill isn't practical to address that concern. Neoliberalism, in no small part, is what has led us to this point, and now we're reacting. Part of that is we ourselves, Americans, are demanding goods and services, including certainly foreign goods, made faster and cheaper. And as I've said from this well before, foreign labor is some of our most essential industries, work in our most essential industries like agriculture, temporary farm workers. So content are we to be suspicious of some of these countries, perhaps rightfully so, and yet readily, in action if not word, welcome their goods, services, parts, and labor into our markets. On that point, know this. We know that the large, already most robust businesses will certainly be affected by this. We heard testimony about legitimate businesses in Florida pulling out and the challenges that was faced to logistics in our port of where we would store parts. We know manufacturers are concerned. That said, even more affected by this bill will be small businesses who especially cannot afford that instability and uncertainty. We should look, I agree, at the companies we allow to buy our properties and assets, our debt, but whatever that analysis reveals, it will show we need to that much more affirmatively do what we always say, support small businesses, which are often minority and yes, immigrant owned. I would say that those businesses among businesses would be hurt the most, those whose grit and entrepreneurship we say we most value. In the end, in times of strife, foreign wars that America has fought, and the threats that we face now from pandemics, bioethical challenges, deepfakes, all of the things we've discussing, our ability to withstand challenges will depend on our ability to actually work together, to collaborate with people different from ourselves. And that is what, in my opinion, will show ourselves to be infinitely stronger on every possible level than the regimes that we're targeting. We are Americans, and we as Americans, I believe, are better than that, and we are better than this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Roberts, recognized to speak to the bill. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hello, colleagues. Let me start by saying that I firmly believe every single one of us in this chamber wants to keep our nation and state safe. I have heard the testimony of the sponsors of this bill, and I understand the fear behind it. I also heard a lot about the intent of the bill, and I agree with it in concept, but there are lots of ways to accomplish national security, and frankly, this just doesn't do it, and it's illegal on its face. I am keeping count, Mr. Speaker, and passing 2 bills in 2 days that y'all know are illegal on their face and will result in litigation to be paid for by the Georgia taxpayers is approaching fiscal malfeasance. First, I know y'all have been made aware that Florida passed a very similar statute and is currently the subject of litigation challenging constitutional issues of the legislation. Just last month, the 11th Circuit recently granted a partial preliminary injunction finding that there was a substantial likelihood the plaintiffs would prevail on their Supremacy Clause claims. They argue that Florida's law violates the Supremacy Clause because this area has been preempted by the federal government since it has created elaborate statutory and regulatory schemes to address this exact issue. It's moving forward in Florida on an accelerated schedule, and the district court will hear arguments in just a few weeks. I still believe this law will violate fair housing, 14th Amendment, due process, and equity issues. I believe there are also constitutional issues with the law being applied ex post facto to require non-resident aliens who currently own land to sell it within 3 years. All of the requirements requiring them to sell land they either own now or could own through inheriting it or foreclosing on a loan could also lead to constitutional takings claims if the forced sale of those properties would result in a loss of property value. So is there a fiscal note on this bill for the litigation costs that we know will result from passing this bill? And y'all, I might have let this one slide from my count of illegal bills. and expensive bills if I thought it would actually stop spies or foreign adversaries from breaching our national security. But this bill will not stop those intent on causing harm. First, according to the lines 76 to 81, a foreign adversary that is a corporation, partnership, etc., is exempt from being defined as a non-resident alien if they lease land and are using it for agricultural resource development or experimental purposes. This confuses me because the testimony in judiciary from the sponsors was that they are concerned about the security of our food supply. So how does a foreign adversary corporation leasing land for nefarious purposes versus buying it keep us safe? If your answer is that the owner would provide oversight over the tenant, maybe, but we have lots of examples of absentee landlords in Georgia. Additionally, because our laws that grant us to form corporations in Delaware, it would be easy for a foreign adversary to circumvent this law without ever identifying here in Georgia they are owned by a foreign adversary. Again, those intent on causing harm are not going to buy land with a foreign corporation. They will utilize an American citizen as a straw buyer. And who is going to enforce these provisions? Where is the fiscal note on that? Of course, we want to give law enforcement the tools to keep our safe state, but this is not going to do it. And in the meantime, our colleagues are telling you that this is harmful to them and their communities. This is not the America I'm proud to live in. These bills do not represent the America I love and will not do what you intend. So please stop wasting our time and taxpayers' money on these performative bills. I yield the well.
Ladies yield to the well. Representative Tran is recognized to speak to the bill. You have a couple of minutes left, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I rise today against Senate Bill 420, and as many of my colleagues have said, I'm a proud American. I believe in our national security, and I do not want the Chinese Communist military or companies that are enemies to our country from having our agricultural farmland. And yet this bill does not do that. It does not protect us. I have read the same national security reports that my colleagues have read. So let's take a look at line 74. Foreign adversary by the United States Secretary of Commerce. Why are we pointing to a list of countries by a department that promotes trade versus a list from the Department of Defense? The Department of Defense has a very long list. Maybe my colleagues are afraid to name out companies like the China National Chemical Corporation or the China State Construction Corporation. Why would you point to a Department of Commerce versus a Department of Defense to protect our state, to protect our country? I think I know why. A year ago, we brought in China. We want China to become our third largest trading partner. We brought them through the Savannah ports, military Chinese officials through our ports to our farmlands last year. So let's take a look at lines 76, 77, 78. Experimental purposes, we're allowing Chinese companies for experimental purposes, including testing, developing, or producing crop production. Now let me go back to that list. We're going to allow the China National Chemical Corporation, that Department of Defense said they are an enemy company. They are out to hurt us. And we're going to give an exemption to come into our state and do experimental agriculture and then sell the fertilizer to our farmers. Does this make sense? It makes zero sense to me. This is a roadmap for our enemies, the actual enemies, not a country, the actual entities and corporations to do business in Georgia to harm us. Just think about it. We're turning to commerce to defend us, to real estate agents to defend us, versus the Department of Defense that lists exactly who our enemies are. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. That completes those that presented opposing the bill. Now we'll hear from those that are in favor. Chairman Perkle, Chairman Clay Perkle is recognized to speak in favor of the bill. You will have up to 30 minutes. We have a couple of speakers that all you guys will divvy up 30 minutes. Chairman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So this bill ensures we are protecting the food supply here in Georgia and ensuring food security for our state. By banning adversarial foreign nations from purchasing our farmland, this common sense legislation addresses growing threat to our farm families, our state, and our nation's security. If we can't grow the food, fiber, and shelter our citizens depend on here at home, we're less safe as a state and a nation. Now, I am passionate about this subject. I worked on it for 2 years. And I hope to show you my support for it without yelling at you. I thank the ones that spoke earlier. Thank you to those that spoke earlier that would like this to be a stronger bill. And I agree, I would like to see it stronger. But this is what we have. This is a good step in this measure. Let me first say that there is nothing in this bill that impacts someone that looks like my friends who have spoken earlier. Nor does it impact anyone who is living here. Let me say that again, because this does not impact anyone who is living here, as long as they're not an agent of a country that is openly hostile to the United States. This is also not Florida's bill. I got to tell you, I looked at Florida's bill, not a fan. This bill is narrowly drafted. It is the best one in the country. So the Bible says to be quick to listen and slow to speak. And I've been trying to do that. I'm not always successful, I got to tell you. But it's amazing things that you pick up on if you listen. The other day I was listening and I heard someone speak from this well, and they used the phrase, gilding the lily. I got to tell you, I had never heard that one, so I looked it up. Here's what it says. Spoiling something that is already perfect by trying to improve it. Now, I like that saying. Not sure I could use that back at the house, but I learned something. And I often learn by listening and observing. And I got to tell you, I love stories. So one of my favorite television shows is Andy Griffith. My wife and I watch it every night before we go to bed. I know, wild times at the Burkle House, but it works for us. At least we don't read Georgia Code before we go to sleep. At any rate, there's an episode where Thelma Lou's cousin, Mary Grace, visits. And Andy and Barney can't go to the dance unless they find a date for Mary Grace, who is, let's just say, a little plain in appearance. Enter Gomer. Barney and Andy get Gomer to take her to the dance, and when Gomer asks if she's pretty, Andy says, she's real nice. She's real nice. What Andy's trying to do is to change the narrative. Sometimes up here we kind of get sidetracked. Our passions obfuscate. We've heard things today about this bill that are not accurate. I'm not going to speak long. It's my general observation that at this point I'm not going to convince you to vote for the bill if you already decided not to. I just want to point out some of the things that this bill actually does. It does not violate fair housing. Alienage, country of origin, as two separate things. To further this point, residential property is specifically excluded from being impacted by this bill. In fact, listen to this. A leader of a foreign country that is openly hostile to the United States can purchase a house directly beside a military base, and this bill doesn't touch it unless we make it stronger. This bill is about protecting national security and our nation's food supply. Ensures our farm community has the ability to feed and clothe Georgians and the world. It ensures those who wish to come here legally and pursue the American dream can do so. It ensures that the pastor who has experienced religious oppression in a country labeled as a foreign adversary can come to the great state of Georgia and work, farm, and raise their family just as I have chosen to. This bill only prohibits non-resident foreign adversaries that are agents. If you are a resident alien in this state, this bill does not apply to you unless you're an agent of a foreign government. This narrowly targets non-residents, businesses, and countries that are openly hostile to the United States from acquiring farmland. There is an exception. We talked about the exception for residential properties, and the other one is for the research and development for agricultural purposes. So there are provisions for good actors in this bill. This bill is only about protecting our food supply. That is a national security concern. We must ensure our number one industry has the ability to produce food, fiber, and shelter for the state, for the nation, and for the world. 24 states, 24, have enacted similar legislation, with another 11 having bills filed. Ours, I got to tell you, I think is the best. The bill you have before you is measured and fully vetted. I have been in countless meetings with many lawyers over 2 years in drafting this legislation. Now, those of you know my affinity for lawyers, you have to realize that Clay took one for the team on this one. Please vote for this bill that protects our nation and our state. So I will exit before I gild the lily and ask you to vote yes on what this bill actually does, because black ink on white paper trumps what I or anyone else says. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Chaz Cannon is recognized to speak to the bill. Representative Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not a very emotional guy, and I won't get very emotional about my remarks on this bill. I'll just give you my perspective and let you decide. But I was lucky enough to be born and raised on the 6th generation family farm in South Georgia. And now I'm lucky enough to be raising my own 2 children there. But besides being lucky, I had the distinct privilege of serving our country in uniform for over 20 years. Now, this does not give me some sort of special qualification on this topic, but I think it does give me some perspective, including having a top secret SCI clearance. And that is why I rise today to support SB 420, a bill that addresses this critical issue concerning the ownership of land in proximity to military facilities. This legislation seeks to protect our national security interests by prohibiting non-resident aliens from certain adversarial countries from acquiring agricultural land or any other land areas within a 10-mile radius of military installations. As y'all know, our military installations play a vital role in safeguarding and protecting the freedoms we cherish as a country. It's imperative that we take proactive measures to ensure the integrity and security of these installations, and this bill is a crucial step in that direction. The purpose of the bill is simple: to deter potential threats to our national security interests. This type of policy is not out of line with those of us who have been stationed on military bases are accustomed to. Like the gentleman from the 68th, I too spent nearly 5 years working at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And if my wife, sweet little Beth, wanted to visit me at work on occasion, I had to sponsor her name for entry, register her name with the Pentagon Security Office. She had to submit to a background check, have valid government-issued photo ID, and pass through multiple layers of physical and armed security just to get inside to see me. If those requirements were not met, she would have been denied entry. not based on her looks, not based on where she's from. She's not from China, she's not from Cuba, she's not from Iran, she's from Moultrie. Now, those of you that know Beth, little 5'2" Beth, know that she wouldn't hurt a flea. But those entry requirements of the Pentagon were established for a reason. It's important to note that this bill exempts the acquisition of residential property from its provisions, as the speaker before me said, thereby ensuring that individuals have the opportunity to reside near military bases while still allowing us to address this broader issue of security. So in summary, SB 420 is both a prudent and necessary measure to protect the integrity of our military installations. I know these places. I spent nearly half my life living and working in and around them. They are critical components to our national security. And so I would simply humbly ask, that we support this bill and demonstrate our commitment to the safety and security of our fellow Georgians and to the people of our United States. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Gentleman is yielded the well. Chairman Meeks is recognized to speak to the bill. Chairman Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to circle back around to what this bill is really about. And for those of you who know me and know me well, know that for the better part of 25 years, I've had the opportunity to be involved in agriculture policy at the highest levels in our country. And while I've never served a day in the military, I stand here today because of every single individual who has served, and I greatly appreciate their service. But somewhere around 20 years ago, I was down in Henry County attending a Farm Bureau dinner on behalf of the gentleman that I worked for. And most people know that when you're a staffer for a congressman or a senator, you really don't have an opinion because your opinion is the boss's opinion, right? That's why you're there. And during this meeting, I had a question that was asked of me of what is your personal opinion about agriculture in our country? And I said, well, the boss's opinion is this. And they said, no, we don't want to know his opinion. We want to know yours because you're the one that talks to him every day. And I said, well, sir, the way that I look at it is my generation and a couple of those before me in this country have never been hungry. And I said, that is the reason why I work every day like I do on agriculture policy, so that we don't go hungry. We have hunger in our country, but as a nation, we have the ability to produce the highest quality, cheapest, most affordable, most abundant food supply of anywhere in the world. And ladies and gentlemen, we can only do that on land. Land that we own, land that we control. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what this is about is our ability to continue to feed ourselves. Take a look around the world and look at those countries who have had blockades put in place where they can't get food in. I don't have to tell you what's happening. You know. This bill is simply about Americans being able to feed Americans. End of story. Because if we can't feed ourselves, we can't defend ourselves, in my opinion. That's why I'm supporting the bill, and I would ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 420. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Gentleman is yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. We'll move on now into the minority report. Whip Park, up to 20 minutes. Chair's time. Chairman Gunther, up to 20 minutes, or allocate as you see fit. Whip Park is recognized to speak to SB 420.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, can I just say that as a Georgian and as an American, it is a shame that my Asian American colleagues have had to come to this well to defend their patriotism and trying to speak against a bill that we fear will lead to discrimination against Asian Americans. 2, only one other state has passed a law like this, and that is Florida. And that has been enjoined temporarily by a federal court. 3, if you care about food, take out the exceptions in this bill that allow Chinese companies to experiment on agricultural policy here in Georgia. How much more contradictory can you get? Now, I rise to oppose Senate Bill 420 because it is preempted by federal law. It is contradictory, and because I fear it will lead to racial discrimination and irreparable harm against American citizens of Asian and Hispanic descent, along with immigrants and refugees who've escaped persecution to come here in pursuit of the American dream. I understand the intent behind this bill to protect Georgia agricultural land, along with military facilities from foreign adversaries. However, as part of this debate over the past 2 years, I have not seen, and I do not believe the author or any supporter of this bill has presented any written information from any national security or state public safety apparatus detailing the threats, dangers, and the extent to which foreign adversaries possess or have a possessory interest in land here in Georgia. All I have heard is fear-mongering, politicking, and how we need to get tough on China. Given the seriousness of this issue, what a shame that it appears a majority party is once again legislating based on fear and not the facts for political gain to the detriment of minority communities. While I appreciate efforts to mitigate harm and improve this bill by addressing the facially discriminatory aspects that would have blatantly violated the Fair Housing Act's prohibition against discrimination on the basis of national origin, unfortunately, I think this bill will still cause great harm to Georgians and may likely be tied up in courts and litigated at the expense of Georgia taxpayers. Again, I understand the sensitivities around this issue that has national security implications and the balance that we must try to find between our liberties and our security. Personally, while it is difficult for me to stay angry or to hold a grudge, I do not forget very easily. I remember last year when I raised questions about the constitutionality of this bill in committee, I was asked by a Republican chairperson here in this body whether I was a member of the Chinese Communist Party. I am not. Now, I'm sure that comment was made in jest, but unfortunately, it is a comment I have heard my entire life growing up as an Asian American here in the state of Georgia. For those who may not know, I'm born here. This is my home state, and I'm proud to be an American. I am the son of immigrants from Korea and the grandson of refugees from the Korean War. My grandparents and family lost everything when the Chinese Communist Party entered the war in October of 1950, crossing the border between China and North Korea in support of North Korea against South Korea, the United States, and its allies from the United Nations. When my mother was just 3 years old, conflict had reached her doorstep. Grabbing what they could in the middle of the night, my grandparents, mother, and 2 uncles headed towards the southernmost tip of the Korean peninsula. One of my uncles, whose name I never learned, did not make it. He either passed away or he remains alive in North Korea today. Like so many refugees of war, my family lost everything and had to start all over. They lived in a refugee camp. They slept on dirt floors. One of my aunts was born in a broken down ambulance on the side of the road. The Korean War devastated the Korean peninsula, and the imposition of the 38th parallel divided families that remain separated even today. Given the harm inflicted by the Chinese Communist Party on my family, I can assure y'all this is not an issue I take lightly. It would be easy for me to vote yes to look tough on China. That'd be good politics for me. However, as an American citizen, I've sworn to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. Unlike some members here in this body, I will not put political gain and self-ambition before the best interests of Georgians and the people and communities I serve and represent. I will not vote for legislation or take action that I believe undermines and defies the United States Constitution that I've sworn to uphold. As an American, I believe it is a duty of every generation to perfect our union, to live up to our highest values of freedom, equality, and justice, to maximize individual liberty for all, to ensure equal dignity and protection under the law, and to ensure justice for all. Unfortunately, unlike some in the Republican Party, I think our best days are ahead of us, and that we do not need to go backwards to make America great. If we are to successfully do the hard work of perfecting our union, we must understand our shared history, the good and the bad. We must understand that the injustices and inequities we see today are inherited from the sins of the past. In knowing our history and being clear-eyed with the challenges we face today, we can move forward and ensure our nation remains the indispensable nation to the world and a model of a thriving representative democracy that empowers we the people. Ignoring our history and being driven by fear and political self-ambition, however, we will only end up repeating the mistakes and the sins of the past, just like this bill we have before us today. This bill and its many iterations are eerily similar to alien land laws. If y'all did not know, there were a series of laws enacted in the late 19th and early 20th centuries which prohibited non-citizens, specifically Asian immigrants, from owning agricultural land or in some cases any real property. These laws were motivated by economic and racial factors and were widely considered to be discriminatory and racist, similar to redlining and racialized zoning laws that prevented African Americans from purchasing property in white neighborhoods. For more than 50 years, more than 20 states codified some version of alien land laws like this bill. It was not until the 1948 landmark Supreme Court cases, Oyama v. California and Takahashi v. Fish and Game Commission, that these racially discriminatory laws were struck down as unconstitutional in violation of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, which guarantees equal protection of the law to all persons, citizens and non-citizens, within a state's jurisdiction. Today, these unconstitutional alien land laws are no longer in effect in any state in the United States. The last remaining state to have an alien land law was Florida in 2018. How ironic that Florida, under Republican leadership, became the first and only state that has passed similar legislation like this in 2023. What happened with Florida's discriminatory law? Some of my colleagues mentioned this earlier today. On February 1st, 2024, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals stopped or enjoined pending appeal Florida's law as to two plaintiffs because of the substantial likelihood that it would be found to be preempted by federal law under the U.S. Constitution's Supremacy Clause, specifically 50 U.S.C. Section 4565, the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act of 2018, or FIRMA. FIRMA expands the jurisdiction of the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States to address growing national security concerns over foreign exploitation of certain investment structures which traditionally have fallen outside their jurisdiction. In concurrence, Judge Abudu of the 11th Circuit wrote that she would have granted a preliminary injunction based on the substantial likelihood of success that the Florida bill, like this discriminatory bill, violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. In that opinion, she wrote, "The 14th Amendment protects citizens and non-citizens alike, meaning both are entitled to equal protection of the law of the states within which they reside. Because the impact of the Florida bill served as a blanket ban against Chinese non-citizens from purchasing land within the state, Judge Abudu found that the new Florida law blatantly violates the 14th Amendment's protection against discrimination. Similarly, I'd argue this bill is clearly preempted by federal law. As previously mentioned, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States already scrutinizes real estate transactions that could jeopardize national security. The Supreme Court has already ruled that federal power supersedes state attempts to legislate in traditional areas of federal domain, foreign relations, and immigration. And certainly when it comes to matters of national security, the federal government is the primary and usually sole authority, which would make state efforts to legislate in that area unconstitutional in violation of the Supremacy Clause. With respect to the Equal Protection Clause's protection of non-citizens against discrimination, I appreciate the efforts made to narrow the scope of this bill by defining non-resident alien as someone who is an agent of a foreign government designated as a foreign adversary. However, as I've mentioned earlier, I remain confused as to why there's a loophole, this temporal condition imposed that on lines 21 and 26 that allows foreign agents who live in Georgia year-round to purchase agricultural land and land near military installations. It doesn't make sense to me. I remain equally perplexed in that multiple Republican legislators have stated that this bill is focused on Chinese nationals, while at the same time, China remains one of the top trading partners for Georgia's agricultural exports that exceeded $5.8 billion in 2023, according to the Georgia Department of Economic Development. Again, I've heard multiple times about how this bill is only about protecting the food supply, our food supply, from foreign adversaries. And yet, on lines 38 to 43, if that's the correct line bill numbers, given how many iterations of this bill we've seen, including one that came out just a few hours ago, there is an exception here in this bill that you're voting on to allow corporations owned by foreign adversaries who lease land from its owner to use such land for agricultural research and development. If y'all really believe all the rhetoric that China's coming after America, would it not make sense for the state of Georgia to divest entirely and stop all trade with China? Or is that a step too far because it hurts your bottom line? Given the gaping holes in this bill and the perplexing contradictions of what is in the bill and what y'all have said, in my humble opinion, any potential security benefit this bill may bring is greatly outweighed by the potential irreparable harm and racial discrimination that may result against American citizens of Asian and Hispanic descent. This bill imposes a mandatory duty on Georgia real estate agents or brokers to timely disclose the requirements of this bill to any prospective buyer or seller, and makes it a felony and a fine of $15,000 to anyone who intentionally violates this bill. With the threat of a felony hanging over them, why would a real estate agent, especially a commercial real estate agent, want to work with or engage with anyone who may look or appear Chinese or Asian, or as if they are from a country on this foreign adversary list? Growing up here in the Deep South, I can't tell y'all how many times I've been called Chinese. When people first meet me, they can see that I'm Asian, but they may not be able to distinguish whether I'm Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, whether I'm a citizen or non-citizen, whether I'm an agent of a foreign government or someone who loves his country here in America. Let's be honest now. How many of y'all on both sides of the aisle have confused me with Representative Longtran and Representative Marvin Lim? It's okay. I can't tell the difference between half y'all anyways. It's okay. But it speaks to the point here in this bill. If a real estate agent finds out that a prospective client is Chinese, how do they determine whether or not they're a foreign agent? Is a realtor's obligation under this bill simply to disclose the requirements of this bill? What if they find out someone is a Chinese national? Do you think they'd proceed with such a transaction at the risk of a felony and a $15,000 fine? With respect to enforcement, will the legal counsel from a local government or attorney general independently verify all real estate transactions involving agricultural land? Or as suggested in committee per a hypothetical, will they rely on the tips of neighbors who have fears of some Chinese-looking person moving into the neighborhood? Will it be the obligation of any Asian or Hispanic Georgian to demonstrate they are not a foreign agent to purchase land here in the state of Georgia, just like my Asian American colleagues have had to come down here to this well to defend their patriotism? Passage of this bill will cast a shadow of suspicion on any Asian or Hispanic-looking person who may want to purchase agricultural land or land near a military installation, even if that person may be serving in our armed forces. That is a bill y'all are trying to push through. That is the bill that is emanating and coming out of your party today. What a shame. The uncertainty and fear generated by this bill will likely lead to discrimination on the basis of race against Americans of Asian and Hispanic descent. We saw this with the rise of discrimination and violence against Asian Americans in the midst of the COVID pandemic, when twice impeached, Trump, who wants to be a dictator, and his MAGA Republican supporters used terms like the China virus that fanned the flames of xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment. This led to elderly Asian Americans literally getting attacked and beaten in broad daylight. As an Asian American who has learned his history, I can see where this road leads. And I'm concerned, as I've repeatedly said, as to the direction of the Republican Party today, because we've seen where that's led before, just a few years ago. Asian American discrimination has a long and complex history, particularly during times of crisis and in moments of fear and uncertainty. From the Chinese Exclusion Act that banned immigration from Asia and prevented all Americans of Asian descent from becoming citizens, to the forced relocation and internment of more than 120,000 Japanese Americans, to the rise in hate crimes and discrimination against Asian Americans fueled by racist rhetoric and disinformation amidst a COVID-19 pandemic. It seems we have not come as far as we thought with respect to living up to our highest American principles and values of ensuring freedom, equality, and justice for all. As a proud son of Georgia, and as an American citizen, I will always stand and fight to defend and uphold the United States Constitution. And I will always stand and fight back against these dangerous bills that may lead to racial discrimination, against the irreparable harm a bill like this may cause to so many Georgians. And so for all these reasons, I hope each of you will join me in voting no to SB 420. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will happily yield to any questions that members may have, and if there are no questions, I will yield the well.
The gentleman has no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
He's yielded the well. We'll now move on to chairman's time. This bill came from the Judiciary Committee. Chairman Gunther is recognized to speak to the bill. Chairman Stan Gunther.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to express my support for Senate Bill 420, a bill that addresses a critical issue raised concerning the ownership of land in proximity to military facilities. This legislation seeks to protect our national security interests by prohibiting non-resident aliens from acquiring agricultural land or any other land areas within a 10-mile radius of military installations. Our military facilities play a vital role in safeguarding our nation's security and protecting the freedoms we hold dear. It is imperative that we take proactive measures to ensure the integrity and security of these installations, and Senate Bill 420 represents a crucial step in that direction. Similarly, our agricultural land plays a vital role in keeping our nation fed and supplied and must be protected from foreign adversaries. At least 24 states have enacted legislation regulating foreign ownership of real property in the United States. 20 other states have introduced legislation regulating foreign ownership similar to this. This measure is not intended to discriminate against any particular group, but rather to safeguard against potential threats to our national security interests. It is important to note that Senate Bill 420 exempts the acquisition of residential property from its provisions, thereby ensuring that individuals have the opportunity to reside in the vicinity of military installations while still addressing the broader issue. Senate Bill 420 is a prudent and necessary measure to protect the integrity of our military installations and uphold the security of our nation. I urge my esteemed colleagues to support this bill and demonstrate our unwavering commitment to safeguarding the interests of the people of Georgia and the United States. And I want to point out one other thing, is that we added House Bill 1247 to this bill, a bill that provides for transfer on death deeds, and it passed this House 171 to 0. So for that reason, I would ask you to please consider a positive vote on this bill. And I yield the rest of my time to my good friend Martin Montahan.
Chairman has yielded his time, a portion of his time anyway, to Representative Martin Montahan. Representative Montahan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the House. Today I rise in support of this good measure. You know, we've had a lot of folks stand up today and talk about their backgrounds and where they're from, what that means to them. And I think as someone who sits on the other side of the aisle, I ought to do the same. You know, my father came here in the 1970s on a plane from Iran, which was then an ally to this country. We had great leadership in that country. And just a few short years later, we had an Islamic regime that toppled an existing government. And not only did it bring freedom to its knees in that country, it brought every single citizen of that country to their knees and made them bow to a tyrannical Islamic Sharia law that has never been seen before, totally destabilizing the Middle East. That has, in the time since, done nothing but try to undermine the United States of America. It has spent its fortune on oil, on building IEDs, delivering them to enemy states, and killing our soldiers. That is what a foreign adversary is. That is what these countries that are listed in this document here today are doing to our country. And we should take heed. But let's talk about some other countries. According to the last 3 FBI directors in this country, the last 3, including the current sitting FBI Director Christopher Wray, he said that China was the #1 national security threat to this country. That's bipartisan. I don't care if you voted for red or you voted blue. I can tell you today that both agree that China is the #1 threat. Let's talk about a Congress who's moving too slow to protect states like ours. Committees like CFIUS, those who regulate foreign investments, foreign money, technology in our country, who are so slow to act that the technology that are in their banned list are half a decade old. Too slow. That is the mandate for us to act. That is why we're here. In 2018, China passed a law that said that any company that is partially owned by the government of China must take any information and deliver it back to the communist Chinese regime. They must do it. They're ordered to do it. Let's talk about the fact that if we went as American citizens to these countries and we said we want to buy your farmland, they would laugh in our faces. I don't think there's a single Iranian official today that would allow you to buy thousands of acres of their farmland in the middle of Shiraz or Tehran. What a joke. Over the last 2 years, 8 instances of espionage by the Chinese and their partners 8 instances that have been found by RFBI, bipartisan, to either undermine, embarrass, or extort elected officials, corporate partners, to steal proprietary information. These are foreign adversaries. That is who we're dealing with today. This bill is not about xenophobia or racism, these catchwords that continue to be thrown around. I'm deeply offended. It's about taking action where Congress has failed our state. It's about taking action where they have failed our state, and they certainly have. They certainly have. This is about foreign adversaries. Read the bill. I enjoy doing that. Read the bill. It's in there. Multiple times talking about foreign adversaries. These foreign adversaries that are acting against us. You know, I heard from the whip that this was rhetoric. No, it's far from rhetoric. Confirmed instances of undermining us, embarrassing us, stealing our technology again and again. That's not rhetoric. That's direct action against our states. And I mean states. I don't even mean federal government. I mean states. Stealing information, selling technology, Huawei phones, DJI drones, Lexmark printers, Lenovo computers. All of these products have been confirmed to steal information and send it back to China. Why? Because they are Chinese owned. Some of y'all probably didn't know that, did you? But they utilize that technology to send it right back to China, to the mainland. I heard from this well that there has been only one other state, just Florida, that has passed this bill. There have been countless, including the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act in Texas, where they found that Chinese nationals, Communist Party nationals, were actually buying the land close to military installations and critical infrastructure to undermine this country's interests. Why? Because Congress has failed to act, and that's a problem. So here we are, with a prudent step for the future, with a way to remedy a portion of those problems. And instead of being congratulatory, which we should be on such a great piece of legislation, we get attacked for racism. I'm offended. At the end of the day, there are things that we have to come together in a bipartisan measure to support. And when it comes to the national security of this country, when it comes to the safety of our families, the business interest of our business community, we must act. And with that, I yield the rest of the time to, or a portion of the time, to Whip Burchett.
Whip James Burchett is recognized to speak to the bill. The gentleman yielded the well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was a little out of order. I thought I was coming next, but I'll do the best I can. Let me tell you a little story real quick. It won't be long, but let's see. August 2014, two Chinese nationals, agents of Chinese Republic, Qin Ricky and Haiwan Huang, purchased 44 acres of agricultural land in Pierce County, Georgia, which is my neck of the woods. So this is a real life example of what we're trying to fight against. Well, February of this year, come to find out, these two gentlemen had set up a $22 million grow operation growing marijuana right there off the Highway 84, right near town. That is what we're talking about, folks. They're seeking to find innocuous places to purchase property, and they're conducting nefarious activity. I mean, you're talking about a $22 million grow operation that I've driven by at least 100 times this year. This year I've driven by it 100 times. This is what we're after. We're not after, and I can point you to the bill, we're not after anybody that's a United States citizen. We're not after anybody that has a legal resident of this country or state. One of the interesting arguments I heard was the argument about litigation costs. Now, I can point you right back to December, folks, and we heard some very impassioned speeches up here talking about how, I can just cut to the chase. We're racist. Republicans are racist, and we are drawing racist maps. And these are unconstitutional. We were sworn to uphold the Constitution, and you are out here drawing racist maps. I heard it from right here, from my friends on the other side. I recall, I know it, and that wasn't long ago. I feel like I've been in session for a year, but I remember that. And it's okay for us to disagree in here. And I expect we're always going to disagree on some issues, particularly some like this. But what we find? Those maps were upheld. And so what I'm telling you is we've got to figure out a way to come together and find some middle ground here on issues that, frankly, for both of us are problematic. Both parties, I mean. Let's come together and find a solution to just poke holes. You know, it's easy to be a defense attorney, right? All you got to do is poke holes in the case. Let's offer solutions. Offer solutions. Let's address what we're after. We do that a lot of times, but sometimes politics is too much, and we must divert from a reasonable mindset. But I'll tell you what happened. The judges found not only that our maps weren't racist, but they were constitutional. So I would say to you, when you're talking about litigation costs, please, please, please stop bringing frivolous lawsuits. Stop bringing them, because you're pandering to your base, as you're saying that we are doing. Stop bringing lawsuits that are frivolous in nature. Stop doing it, and our citizens will stop having to pay or foot the bill to defend frivolous lawsuits. That's my perspective. I recognize there are times that you're right. You bring a lawsuit, you win. But it's unfair to characterize everything we do up here as something that's going to cause our taxpayers to have to pay for defense, when clearly we've won and we lost. So that's not fair. You got to be fair. To my friends, you point out racism, I'll stand right next to you and I'll fight racism. Right now. Currently, this bill is not racist. Is it racist against Russia? Is it racist against Iran? China? No, it is not. There's nothing racist about it. And I'll point to you the fact that we're referencing 15 CFR 7.4, which is a Biden administration list. It's coming from the Biden administration, the Biden Secretary of State, not the Republican Secretary of State. This is the federal government's list that has been dictated to us by the Biden administration. We're not saying, this isn't the Trump administration list. This is the Biden administration list. So I'm asking you folks, let's be straight down the middle. I'll call them balls and strikes. You can't just characterize anything we do as being racist and being, attacking minorities. That is just, I'm at the point where it's falling on deaf ears, because we continue to say that, but we continue to keep winning in court. We continue. If you look back to our maps, that is the closest example I can tell you where
We've had multiple people come to this well and give really good speeches, and you're just wrong. And that's the best I can say. I appreciate the opportunity to debate with each and every one of you. I appreciate that. This is the process, and I think it's the best process we have. But I just implore you, let's push away. Let's push away from the ends of our parties, and let's come to a space that we are predicating or crafting bipartisan legislation to get after the issues that we clearly see are happening in the state. And you said you couldn't point to anything and was fear-mongering, but I just pointed to you one case happened in my neighborhood. Where you have a grower operation that I don't know how many folks that they've been supplying, for how long, at least since 2014 they've been growing, and they're now under arrest. That's what we're after, folks. We're not after anybody that's seeking to chase the American dream that's a legal resident. We're not after anybody that's here to work with Georgia or here to work with the United States. We're after bad actors. I think we all know that, but I want to make sure that I say that, because that's what we're after. If you see racism somewhere, I will stand in front of you, and I'll fight it. But just to say everything's racist, that is just falling on deaf ears. I'm tired of it. I have been called that since I have been born, I feel like. And I am not that. I am not that. And the majority of the people that I know are not that. Let's get past that. Let's move forward and just be done with it. I'm done with it. Mr. Speaker, I yield the will and appreciate your favorable consideration for this bill. Let's get moving, let's get some lunch, and let's get out of here.
The gentleman has yielded the will. That completes the chair's time. We're ready to go. Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee's substitute? Chair has none. The committee's substitute is withdrawn. Is there an objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? Chair has none. The Rules Committee's substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? For what purpose does Representative Roberts rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that the way the majority party drew the maps in 2021 was found by the federal courts to violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act? So that litigation was because of how they were drawn in 2021, and then it required a special session to draw 5 majority black districts. Isn't that true?
Sounds like that's, I know we had a special session to draw those 5 maps. For what purpose does Representative Daniel rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that I represent Henry County, which holds the second largest amount of farmland that has been bought by Chinese entities in the state of Georgia?
I'm sure the lady knows what she speaks. I didn't know that.
Further inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it also true that I have voted yes today on this measure because constituents of mine of all backgrounds and of both political parties have made it abundantly clear that they are sick and tired of foreign entities buying up our farmland and overdeveloping our community?
I'm sure that's the lady's opinion. For what purpose does Representative Saines rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that as the son of immigrants and more pertinent as the representative for Georgia's only nuclear submarine base, that I strongly support this measure and urge all my colleagues to, as this is not about national background or origin, but about national security that all citizens of all backgrounds benefit from?
I'm sure the gentleman believes in what he speaks because he lives there. For what purpose is I'm going to take 2 more. For what purpose does Representative Holly rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that of the aforesaid Henry County, of which I am the chair, that in that county, although we have land that may be purchased by those who are from China, we are in no way through this initiative here making our military any safer?
I'm sure the gentleman knows where the military is around Henry County. I don't. So for what purpose is Majority Leader F. Strachan rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that a Democrat U.S. Senator recently said that Congress needs to do more to protect American agricultural security and prevent our foreign adversaries from controlling our country's food supply while also gaining access to land near sensitive military sites? And is it not further true that the Democrat Party here today are the ones who are making this political, because this is simply an issue of national security and ensuring that Georgia's #1 industry, agriculture, is protected?
I'm sure the gentleman believes of what he speaks. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 420. The yeas are 97, the nays are 67. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Okay, we're going to break for lunch. Recognize Chairman Parrish. First, I'm going to recognize Representative Bazemore for an announcement. Representative Bazemore is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a reminder that the South Fulton delegation will be meeting in room 216 at 1:30. Lunch is served.
Members, we need to tend to a piece of business just for a minute. For what purpose does Chairman Petrie rise?
To make a motion, Mr. Speaker.
State your motion.
Make a motion to recommit Senate Bill 63 to the Rules Committee.
I think the gentleman, I think that may be.
I'm sorry, SB 69, Mr.
69.
Speaker. I'm so sorry.
No problem. Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption?
Senate Bill 69 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3, Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to state flag, seal, and other symbols so as to provide for the placement of a monument in honor of the Honorable Clarence Thomas.
On the gentleman's motion that SB 69 be withdrawn from the calendar and recommitted to the Rules Committee, is the objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. Chairman Powell is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the members of the House Regulated Industries Committee meet me in 403 immediately for just a 5-minute piece of business, unless y'all want to debate it? Now.
Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want everyone to know that the Working Family Caucus last meeting for the year is in room 307 at CLOB, and we will be discussing what we still call the good, the bad, and the ugly. So look forward to seeing you all over there. Lunch is served. That is CLOB 307. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Scott is recognized for an announcement.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mrs. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Agriculture and Women are here today. They are in room 230 downstairs. When you leave here, go down and see the National Women in Agriculture. They are here today. Thank you.
Okay, members, we have one more announcement you may want to pay attention to, maybe two. This House is going to stand in recess in just a moment until 2:30. 2:30. First, I'm going to recognize, before I make that formal announcement, recognize the chairman of the Rules Committee. Chairman of the Rules Committee, Chairman Parrish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the Rules Committee will meet at 2:15. 2:15.
That completes our announcements. This House will stand in recess. Rules Committee at 2:15. We will come back to order in this very room at 2:30. The House is in recess until 2:30.